Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Entrepreneurship Matters. My name is Alicia Wilson. I'm Vice President for Economic Development and Community Partnerships at Johns Hopkins University and Johns Hopkins Health System. And it's a pleasure to welcome you to the most energizing, electrifying Entrepreneurship Matters today with two women who are leaders in the energy business. I am going to do their bios, introduce the show, and then we're going to get right into the conversation. We know that successful businesses, successful business owners are not built in a day. It takes a long-term commitment, multiple failures, and a lot of grit to make it happen. And these two entrepreneurs are no different. Let me introduce you to Sheryl Pons, as well as Jill Hamilton. And I'm going to give you their bios. And again, we're going to get right into the conversation. First, I want to introduce you to Sheryl Pons of Day Technologies Corporation. Day Technologies Corporation is an amazing company saying that you're electric vehicle adoption expert. That is definitely what Sheryl is. Sheryl confers extensive project management, negotiations, and transactional experience in various industries, including corporate banking, manufacturing, commercial real estate. She conferred a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Tennessee, an MBA from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, and she is also a certified project management professional. She's a bad woman. Sheryl launched Daytech Corp, inspired by her own personal desire to own an electric vehicle and working through her experience to overcome range anxiety. Stymied by the physical limitations to energize an electric vehicle at home, she sensed that there are many individuals like her, enjoying life in urban markets who require greater access to electric vehicle battery chargers. Concluding that there was no simple market solutions available, Sheryl began creating her own and courageously has catapulted into the new era of electrified transportation. Welcome, Sheryl. So glad to have you on Entrepreneurship Matters. It is truly a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Excellent. Next, I want to introduce Jill Hamilton of Sustainable Energy Strategy. Jill is the founder and president of Sustainable Energy Strategies. She has more than 30 years of experience consulting in alternative transportation fuel industry. I didn't even know that was existed for 30 years.
I feel really old right now.
No. Over the past 25 years, her team has raised more than $1 billion for biofuels and alternative energy industries. Wow, that's a mouthful. Specifically, her team under her direction has prepared, submitted, and in some cases managed dozens of federal grants. In addition, she has provided biofuel market development nationally for Clean Fuels Alliance America and its foundation in the Mid-Atlantic region on behalf of the Maryland grain producer. She brings a deep familiarity of government grant writing, project management, and equity private fundraising. Your company is a trusted advisor to the National Clean Cities Program and is a Tiger Team consultant to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. She has a Bachelor's of Science degree with honors in environmental studies from Princeton College. Welcome, Jill. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, Alicia, that was a mouthful.
I know. I was like, I'm tired. Like, let me drink some water so I can get energized. And I have a green bottle today just for you all.
Oh, nice. I appreciate
it up. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So let's get right into the conversation. And I want to know, and I love that two women in this field that is very male dominated. So what inspired, I'm gonna start with you, Sheryl. What inspired you to want to be an entrepreneur? And then also, we'll get to the next question, but
okay,
let's start with that. What inspired you to want to be an entrepreneur?
Well, I've been in and out of business opportunities throughout my adult life, and in many cases, I got further well, it started with Avon, I think, the first time when I was in high school. It had an Avon business.
Oh,
But didn't
my
want to
dad
work
sold
it.
Avon. All you Avon people, y'all are special people in this world.
I didn't want to work it, and I really appreciated the fact that it pretty much sold itself. So,
Yes.
Just leave the book with your telephone number. Back then, we didn't have, the internet. So it was, leave your telephone number in the order sheet and, follow suit. But one of the things that I concluded is that I worked in economic development when I was in Brooklyn, and ultimately ended up in commercial real estate. And it was about that time I was in commercial real estate that I figured out that I probably needed to just go ahead and scratch that itch to become my own. I just go for it and do not stop. Because many of the ideas I had came to fruition, but I had an experience of burning out because sometimes I was so far ahead of the technology that I grew tired of explaining to people what I was seeing, right? And I felt that with a Dye Technologies Corporation, that I hit the market at the right time, just right before, it's not even mainstream yet, but the technology was there. And because the Tesla was already driving around, the Teslas were driving around the country, people could see the electric vehicle and it was a real thing.
Yeah. I love that, Sheryl, how you talked about your evolution of, really starting as a teenager and just entrepreneurship, but your vision around this work, really you being ahead of the game allowed for you to ultimately build a business into what it is now. Jill, I'd love for you to tell us about did you start at Avon too?
No, but I've sold a lot of Girl Scout cookies and
all right.
things.
It's either one. It's one or the other. Yeah.
But for me, it's I've always held a lot of leadership roles, and so that's never been a thing that's intimidated me. But for me, when I was thinking about my career path, high school science teacher said, "Jill, what do you want to do with your life?" And I said, I really want to do something for the environment. This was in the 80s. And we were just coming off of an energy crisis in the late 70s. So it's dating me here, but the energy crisis was pretty impactful. And a lot of people were fearful of whether or not we'd have enough energy. So I really wanted to go into energy and environment. He said, go into energy because there's always going to be energy. You always are going to have to deal with energy. And so I set up my undergraduate with that in mind and did an internship at the Department of Energy in their biomass program. Somebody said you could turn grass into fuel, ethanol that you can put in your car. And I'm like, that's cool. I want to figure out how to do that. So that's kind of what started me. And when I worked for the Department of Energy, they did offer me a job, but I didn't like the bureaucracy of it. So I went and worked for a small consulting firm that gave me a lot of experience working independently, like bidding contracts. Like if I hadn't worked for that small consulting firm and gained that experience of how to bid a contract and how to manage a project at a very young age in my 20s, I wouldn't have had the confidence to go out on my own. And really it's kind of, so why what inspired me is kind of necessity, right?
Yeah.
So I was at a point right at the cusp of 30 that I was deciding, what are my next steps? I had several job offers, but none of them felt right. And I was wanting to start a family. And my boss said, well, I'll give you I think 6 weeks off was the time. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like enough for me. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully I had the support of my family, my husband at the time, to give up my higher paying job to quit work and start my own business. And I had enough people in the field, having worked on an alternative fuels hotline for the Department of Energy. I knew enough about policies and whatnot and I felt like I had enough technical information that I could start doing my own consulting and they would give me work. And I ended up working for Maryland Grain, who's still a client of mine, was my first client. And then, in the ethanol industry. That's how I got started. But I also wanted to form it around being a full-time mom.
And I love it. And I love how you talked about, the crisis of the moment, because we this generation, all of us have been through, I have to feel like I've been through 5 crises. You may be 6, because I think you're like maybe 1 generation, 2 generations, 1 generation, you probably at the energy crisis, and how you fueled the crisis, you saw the opportunity of what might be possible. Sure, I'd love for you to talk about why energy for you. Jill talked about the energy crisis of the 80s and seeing that. Why energy as an industry though?
Oh, you're muted, Sheryl.
I started my, this is like a this being in the EV business is somewhat full circle for me. My first encounter with energy was my 8th grade science fair project. I built a solar array out of black trash can bag, a light bulb, a dry cell battery, the kind that hobbyists use. I don't think kids use those anymore. Some glue, some glue that could, glue a trash can bag together and created a pattern. And so it was a thermal solar project to demonstrate that you could, in fact, use the sun to heat the air. And I did very well on the science fair.
You did, Sheryl. No wonder you went into engineering.
I know.
I did very well in the science fair.
Yeah, I was doing something else today.
Yeah, it was the citywide science fair in Washington, D.C. when I attended Remote Junior High School, and did very well in the science fair. And that really stoked my interest in energy, and had sought during one of the energy crises, like Jill had mentioned, to pursue a degree in that would study solar energy.
Yeah.
And I found out that engineering would be a good field. And a number of universities at the time offered a lot of scholarship money was floating around. And the crisis was averted. They pulled the scholarships and from the Department of Energy, right? And many of those scholarships went towards the schools out in the Southwest, and I wasn't willing to go that far. So as a proxy, I majored in mechanical engineering and thermal sciences to understand thermodynamics and how you move things with mechanical energy like steam, and also water, and that's what happened. And throughout my career, even though I didn't go into solar engineering per se, had always been the person on the job who was responsible for the environmental projects, the sustainability project, the recycling project, whatever. It's like the swap the light bulb project. And it was okay because I knew that we were doing more things to not waste energy. And, ultimately, I'm back in the industry in a way that I had not anticipated when I was in the 8th grade.
I love both of your comments, because you see the power of exposure of young people to possibilities. Mm-hmm. And second, you both were able to harness that unknowingly into what is a part of your journey today. We're getting so many questions in the chat and on Facebook for both of you. So I'm going to weave them all into this amazing, electrifying conversation. I have a lot of jokes. Those of you who are listening on the phone, as always, you can text us 22333, type JHUWL in the message. I'll get all of your questions. I'm already seeing your questions, but those of you who want to participate on that are just listening, you can do that as well. So one quick question that I would have that came in on Facebook is around COVID in your businesses. And the person writing the question said that they imagined that there was an increase in interest in your industry since sustainable energies and companies like Tesla became hugely popular, but also there seemed to be like a lot of question about what if you can't get the stuff from overseas or somewhere else, how are we going to sustain ourselves within the continental US? So how did that shift your business, or how did it open you up? Jill, I'll start with you and then Sheryl.
Sure. Actually, the pandemic has been a huge boom for my business, and I've had to, I've always tried to keep my business small enough so I can manage it well, right? Quality over quantity. But there was so much demand for fundraising and business development aspects, especially during this administration as well. There's been a lot of funding, and Sheryl can talk to this too. So I've had to carefully add staff to, and my staff is really more paid consultants that I trust to my team. And that means that you have to share your business model, and you have to oversee watching more people, which is stretching my comfort zone, but it's definitely been an exercise for me where I had to reach out to others and train up other people to help do some of this training, because I realized, I can't do it with my small team. So
Absolutely.
good question.
Yeah, sure. How about you? How is COVID? I feel like I've seen you more during COVID than I ever have before. But how has COVID shifted your business?
Well, COVID did me a favor because it forced me to settle down and focus my business. One of the things that I learned when I knew this from past experiences, especially observing the internet and the .com boom, that when an industry is being formed, like this is say, well, Jim will tell you it's been around for a while. Well, energy has always been around, right? But it has not been been going in the direction it's going into, and people buying into, and also the general public, politicians, policymakers, buying into it. Okay, one thing I knew was that there's always this crazy amount of opportunity because all these ideas are flowing. And so at some point, I was just out there like the Who in Whoville. Who is the Who?
Right. I've been there too.
Great book.
And then COVID hit. Folks didn't really quite get it, except for maybe folks who were parking their cars at work, charging their cars at work. And most of those folks were limited to folks who worked at A-class buildings or trophy buildings, right? Their landlords went out to maintain those leases. They went out and put charging stations in those buildings. However, those folks came home and they didn't have a way to charge their car. So immediately, my initial entry point was to go into commercial business, leveraging my experience or relationships in commercial real estate. But immediately I had to make a pivot and go into residential. And in order to just even get the experience of installing EV charging stations. So that was great because it became a low-hanging fruit situation. And the sales cycle is a whole lot shorter for someone who's calling you on the phone and needs you there in a week versus working through a procurement manager who's got, compliance issues, criterias, bidding processes and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love how you think of, I didn't even think about the commercial, everyone goes home and now they don't have a charger.
They don't have a charger
for their electric vehicle. Let me ask you this question, which is, so you both have like light bulb ideas, right? Light bulb ideas of where you're going to start. But how did you go from an idea to a business, right? What were the steps that you went through as a business owner? You have an idea. That doesn't mean you have a business.
Right.
So what were the steps that you went through? Jill, I'll start with you and then Sheryl.
Thanks. That's a great question. I love it. To me, when you're first starting to think about it, I always recommend to people to get a mentor, somebody who you can bounce ideas off of. And before you start a business, you talk about interest in that business. So for me, it was, do I have somebody that I could use as a client or have as a client? I talked to a couple people. I didn't want to burn bridges with the current company that I was working for. And so I wanted to leave on good terms. And that's a difficult thing if you're starting a new business. But my boss understood, if I'm trying to be a full-time mom, he understood that. But I ended up doing advocacy work, and then fundraising kind of fell out of that for a client. And I also had the support of my husband, right? So you have to have a support system of some sort that you can rely on when you're going out on your own, whether it's your own resources that you've saved up, or that you have the support of a spouse or a colleague or somebody that you're collaborating with, so that you can kind of get through that first period, usually a year, without pay. In my case, I was fortunate enough to be able to be in the black the first year, but not everybody is. Usually it takes over a year. I think those would be my recommendations. Get a mentor, bounce the idea out there about interest in the career path or the entrepreneurship, and then have a support system.
I love it. I took down 4 points that you made. The mentor being key. the interest. So who's going to be your client? Third, advocacy, fundraising. And then fourth, get through your first year. How are you going to build that? So thinking really holistically about how you are going to build that. Great nuggets. Sheryl, what allowed for you to go from brilliant idea to starting a business? What were the steps you went through?
Well, I had been chewing on it for a while, and mainly because I was, tracking what was going on with Elon Musk. And I think one day I was sitting in line at Costco, and it's like, you know what, this technology is 100 years old. We need to do something else, right? It's time to disrupt the oil industry. And not too long after that, I ran into a gentleman who owned an electric vehicle. It's the first one I had seen in the district. And I was walking, for those of you who are familiar, I was walking across the street from Ben's Chili Bowl. I flagged him down.
How long ago was that, Sheryl?
This is like in 2016, 2017. Okay. I flagged him down. He was grinning from ear to ear. And he knew I wanted to talk to him about his car. And he went on and on about how much he enjoyed the car. It's, it's great. It's the best thing. And I was excited for him. And I asked him two questions. One, do you like it? And of course, he could be the brand ambassador for Tesla. And two, do you have a way to charge your vehicle at home? And he's like, no. I was like, really? And I said to myself, he's a brave soul. But I knew two things after that conversation. Elon Musk was onto something, because he could convince people who had no way of powering up their vehicles by his product, right? But the other thing I knew was that everyone would not be, as much as they want an electric vehicle, like in my case, everyone's not going to buy a car without being able to charge it,
right?
Have the convenience of charging it at home. So from that, first of all, I not only had a light bulb moment, but I had a confirmation that this thing could actually work. And then I went to the lab. Okay, and the lab was a library. On the way home, I had committed to studying and researching the industry for at least 3 nights a week at the library after work. It closed at 9. I would be there sometime around 6 and try to get out by 8 on my way home. And that's how that whole thing started. And once I left my former role, it was a little difficult, because I'm really trying to use information coming from California, because California is the only market that had this information. Sure. And try to apply it to a local market that was just now getting a sense that it was going to go in that direction. Had a few things going for us, because Maryland signed a decree or MOU with about 7 other states in 2013. And by the time I got moving, the Public Service Commission was evaluating whether or not it would allow the utility companies to install EV charging stations. So it was a combination of a few things that were going on in the marketplace that to help create the structure for the EV charging infrastructure. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of it. And I also knew, being a woman in the industry, I had to move at the beginning, because if I waited, I would probably lose my biggest window of opportunity.
Well, I love how you just said that, because timing is everything.
Time is everything.
And I took down 5 notes that you said. One, you'd done upfront research and had been tracking the industry and tracking in particular Elon Musk. Second, you found a person with a car, and you're right. Everybody that you stop with an electric vehicle, they are like salespeople for those electric vehicles. They should get paid. I think they should get it for free. And really understanding all of that. But in that conversation, you did number 3, which is you did really in-depth market research, because you realized, which gave you an aha moment to say, if you're willing to buy a car and you don't even know how you're going to charge it, you can't charge it at home. There's going to be a gap of people who are going to want that. 4, I love your library story of going to the library 3 days a week. Because it just demonstrates a level of commitment and seriousness to the work that you are about to embark on. 5, then looking at the local market, looking at what's happening in California, so that when the sun started shining east,
exactly.
you could take advantage of the sunshine because you were first in, right?
Exactly.
I love the points that you just made. One question that one of our folks texted in was, both of you had long game, right? You both were in for a long game. How did you remain focused to see the missed benefits from that only came, years after you started? How did you remain focused in an industry where you were at the very infancy of the work?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's blown up, right? Now someone they could see the vision. Mm-hmm. Jill, how did you do that? And sure, I'd love for you to talk about it. You just said a couple of minutes ago, it was hard your vision was so far advanced for where others were at that time. So how did you remain focused, Jill?
Oh, that's a great question. A lot of prayer.
A lot of prayer, that's right.
But it's funny, one of my colleagues who's been with me, all my staff have, with the exception of one person, has stayed with me ever since I hired them, which means that they were committed to. I've had really good staff, and I would say being able to diversify when you need it. Like Sheryl said, you need to be studied up. You need to see where the direction is going. If I'm in biofuels and there are no more internal combustion engines or diesel engines, I'm going to have to do something else. So for me, you can see the writing on the wall on that too, is that, is it only going to be heavy duty vehicles, or is it going to move to sustainable aviation fuel or marine fuel? So you have to be willing and able to adapt and see how your product applies. And so for me, I ended up during the past few years during the pandemic, I was able to take on new clients. Most of mine had been in the transportation space, but I took on a hydrogen project and got that funded. And I've taken on a sustainable aviation project, $102 million grant for them. And so you find different ways to diversify, but you have to be willing to put yourself into those marketplaces and be confident that you can serve them.
Yeah, no, diversify until the market force. I love that point that you just made on that.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I've been there, and that's hard. If they start cutting you back, you got to be able to adjust.
Yes. Sheryl, how about you? How did you remain focused?
Well, it's really interesting. When I worked at economic development, I saw how ideas that I share with other entrepreneurs would float and then fly, right? And so, and folks, I've been known in Brooklyn to be the idea person. Hey, run something, see what Sheryl has to say about this, and look at the approach. So that became my reputation in the market. However, when I started my own ventures when I was in New York, I was so, like I said, I was very far ahead of the market and didn't realize how far ahead I was. So by the time the technology matched my idea, I was burned out, right? So this time, and I realized that if I had just stuck with it, I'd be where I wanted to be. So I knew coming into this, I could not give up this time. I couldn't hang up my cleats. Couldn't take off my boxing gloves. I just had to stay in the ring and stay in the game. So one of the things that helped was just pacing myself, and especially if you're a type of person who can take on a whole lot, highly functional, you can manage a whole lot at once. I'm still learning how to get out of that habit, even as an entrepreneur, okay? And just really just pace myself and be okay with, dropping things off the boat. And then like right now, it's really got on the shore. I took a torch and I burned the boat. That's basically it, okay? I'm on the island of EV infrastructure, EV charger infrastructure, and there's no way to get off the island. So
it took the full plunge.
Boundaries are an important one that show. That's very true. Setting boundaries for yourself.
Yes. This is where I am. I burned that boat, and it's been good. And I had to let go of commercial real estate, which is probably the first. I've been in a number of professional endeavors. And I could say that economic development and commercial real estate was definitely the two that I loved the most. And to give up commercial real estate was very, very hard for me.
I believe it.
I had to take that lighter fluid, throw it on the boat, strike a match, and go. So, yeah.
So can I ask what motivated you to let that go to?
Oh yeah, this is a full conversation, Jill.
Yeah, to me, it's
motivated me. I'll tell you what motivated me. People always say prostitution is the world's oldest profession. It's not. Real estate development is the world's oldest profession. Just check out what Adam and Eve did, right? And so, and I thought about it. I said, you know what? Real estate has been around since time began. But guess what? There's only one time when EV adoption is going to be at its infancy. Yeah. And I need to grab a hold of it now. Yeah. And so, I have other credentials that I can fall back on, but I'll keep my licenses, but I have no intention of pursuing it as a career. And that's what it was. It was basically the newness, the innovation, the emergence of the industry, and you only have once. I mean, it's like this. I get to participate in the auto industry just like the folks who hung out with Henry Ford and the Dodge brothers and the people that started Cadillac, okay, and Mercedes-Benz. Yeah. I'm a part of that class, okay, of folks. And it's almost the same thing 100 years later, okay?
No,
so you only get that once in a lifetime.
You are so right. You look at now like the telephone industry.
Exactly.
You missed out. And you think about Bell Atlantic and AT&T and all of those companies buying airspace. Like, who would have bought airspace? Like air for sale? But they were in on the industry, and that's how they built their infrastructure. So you're so right to be in. But I love how you talked about burning the boat. Jill, how do you set boundaries? Someone asked this question of both.
Oh, that's a fabulous. For me, I set boundaries early on, and I do it with my kids too. It's been wonderful. But when I first started my business, within a year, I had my business rolling and an infant. So I did get my family started too. So I really had to. For me, I wanted to work part-time, so I had to hire other people to work. If I had a full-time job, I had to job share. So I ended up hiring people at the beginning was job sharing. We would just kind of trade off work. And then it got to be a point where there was more of a demand for our services. So we did bring in other people with different skill sets so we could kind of streamline what we were doing. And it really worked well. But I always maintain that part-time work because that's what I want for my balance in my life. And it's right now, like I said, during the pandemic, this has been pushing the envelope because there's such a high demand for grant writing and fundraising. But I still am trying to keep that balance, and you have to commit to yourself that you can't do it all. And so you have to be willing to share the work with other people, like Sheryl. Sheryl, I have done some EV, you should know I've done a lot of EV fundraising as well. But, and
they're great. There's a call after this call.
We'll need to talk. Yeah. But and so it's really knowing when to hire other people or to use consultants to help support you.
I love how you said that, because there comes a point when you can't do it. You have to too much. So and I'll start with you, Sheryl. What are some of your core principles that you follow to grow your business? Because you are, I've watched you grow, Sheryl. You've been an inspiration. Jill, we've
25 years, baby.
25 years. You have grown your business, but what were some of the principles you follow to grow your business?
One of the things that I've done to grow my business is to grow as a human being. And it starts with getting command of my day. Okay. And especially with the pandemic, I joined a community called Reed University, and a part of that affiliation.
Give them that again. Tell people, say that again.
Breathe University is headed, our guru is Dr. Eric Thomas. And many people have probably heard of him. Thank God it's Monday. Well, behind him is an organization. And one part of that organization is our accountability call. So 5 days a week, we have an accountability call at 6 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. And it helps you get the intention, or it helps you with your language. Like, we can't say things, I'm gonna, I hope to. Every time you say that you commit to something, you say, I will. Okay, so you put it out in the atmosphere. So we have to commit to what we are required if we speak, to commit to talk about our quarterly goals, and to commit to that one thing towards that quarterly goal that's going to help us get to the end. And I knew that I was kind of like all over the place. And I had to bring it in. I had to get into focus. And being a part of that community just really, really helped me grow, and learning how to, and learning how to manage my emotions so that they don't get me off track. Okay. I could be I'm the type of person in the morning, before I started my own company, let's say the toast burned. Okay. And I would be so undone sometimes that now I'm in a hurry. I'm rushing. I can't just leave the toast and go to work. I'm like, oh my God, I'm hungry. Just getting into this like cipher, and it became it became a habit. And so being a part of the community helped me, like, okay, you have your moment, and then you cut it off and you get back to business. So that's probably the biggest area that I have grown in. And also being able to tell my family, especially my parents, the limits of my capacity.
Yeah.
And having early, and I had to make a choice. And I remember telling my parents, this is very personal, I'm choosing my life. Okay. Had to stand up to them. I'm choosing my life. I'm choosing my dreams. I love you. I will take care of you. I will make certain that you live your sunset years as beautifully as possible. But at the end of the day, my dreams and your needs to conflict sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was difficult, and it has been difficult. However, like I said, being a part of Breathe University, I know that if I'm better, then I'm better for everybody in my family. So those are the things that have helped me grow my business.
I appreciate you sharing that, right? Because I imagine many entrepreneurs have that point of that being a real part of the growth process, right? Determining, choosing to continue to forge forward when maybe others' desires conflict. And I appreciate you sharing that, Sheryl, because I know that probably spoke to someone else watching, and someone else that's on their journey as they think about how do they grow their business. And that may be a boundary or an energy that they have to deal with. So just appreciate that. Jill, how about you? What are some of the things?
I loved what Sheryl said. I think what's motivating you is an important question, and you have to go forward with integrity. So for me, it was to be a full-time mom and work. So it wasn't necessarily to have, thousands of clients. It was to have quality clients and quality employees that I could count on and rely on, and that they did quality work. So I built my business based on doing quality work. People can rely on us, like Sheryl was saying, quality. For me, again, quality over quantity. But I think you also have to know, what is your end game? Where are you trying to go? What is your mission? For me, it was to see the United States use more domestic energy that's renewable, and whatever form that is. I didn't want my boys fighting for oil rights abroad. I have three sons. Not that I support all the men in the military, but I didn't want my boys to be fighting for oil rights. So I really wanted to pursue something that would displace petroleum, and have, now every time you pull up at the gas pump, you see that fuel that says this contains 10% ethanol. When I got involved in this industry, that did not exist. Our diesel fuel has now 5% and growing. Now DPW, DC Water are running B100, 100% biodiesel vehicles. That didn't happen before I got involved in this industry. So there's small dents in that, but that's the mission. The end game is to really see us go to cleaner burning renewable energy and whatever form that takes, but do it in a manageable way that has integrity and quality.
Yeah.
And people will respond to that and they'll refer you.
I agree with you. I think the operation of integrity, it's as a business growth model is like the most important business growth model that you can engage in. So I'm going to ask this question on Facebook. Oh, Sheryl, you want to add something?
I did want to say about the conversation, those hard conversations you have with your parents. I did go to God in prayer.
Amen. Amen.
Okay. I did not dare venture having that one on my own.
Yes, yes.
The wisdom comes when you start with the higher power, right?
Yes.
So I don't want anyone to fly off the handle. Okay.
No. You have to pray before that conversation.
Exactly.
Yes.
And Sheryl, to add to that is I ended up, my husband's mother just passed away in April. We were in that sandwich generation too. And having a flexible work schedule allowed me to take care of her on a much more regular basis. But or meet her needs more so. So I hear what you're saying, but you do have to factor it in.
Yes. Appreciate both of your candor and your insight on both of that. Let me ask this question, which came in on Facebook, which is, with states like California who are working to phase out gas cars and increase electric vehicles by 2035, what do you think the next 10 years are going to look like in your space? I always thought we'd be in flying cars by now, but maybe that's not happening. But love for you and the electric. Sheryl said no. I'm still Jetsons are still in my head of what we're gonna get.
Keep that goal.
What do you think the next 10 years are going to look like in your space?
One thing I think, of course, electric vehicles will become more mainstream. Folks say that the price of electric vehicles will go down as they proliferate, and I don't think that's what's going to happen. I believe what will happen is that there'll be a point where electric vehicles and legacy cars are at the same point price-wise. They'll compete side by side, right? So the price factor will be taken off the table. That's the first thing. The other thing that I believe will happen, and it's already on the books, not just California, there's some other states that have signed up that you will not be able to register a new gasoline fuel car over the next 10 years. California is one of the states, I think it's Washington State, and I believe Oregon. So those three. The other thing that's on the books is there's this, and this is beyond the next 10 years, but it will happen in 2050. Once again, the state of Maryland joined some other states, it's 15 states that have committed to no semis, no long haul vehicles will be sold or allowed to become large fleets in their states, okay? And so there's going to be this movement in all areas of road transportation, whether it's passenger vehicles, whether it's light haul vehicles or SUVs, medium haul, and of course, long haul vehicles, where we will see a mixture in the marketplace. I don't think we'll be 100% electric vehicles, but it'll definitely create a dent in the market. It will be in a situation where folks will definitely take notice that, hey, this thing is changing. And I think in 10 years will probably be the inflection point where the sales will be about even, and then EVs will take off.
Yeah. Jill, you seeing the same?
Maybe. I think in the next 10 years, I think we'll see a national low carbon fuel standard. I think you'll see all the fuels and the vehicle technologies competing at a same level. I don't know. MIT has done and Fuels Institute have both done projections out to 2050, independent think organizations. that project that EVs will be about 40% of the light duty vehicle market by 2050. It might be higher than that. It just depends on it. And that's with aggressive incentives, which we may or may not have.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a lot of restrictions on those incentives. So I do think you're still going to see some of the internal combustion engines, but I think you'll see them be filled with renewables. And I think that I agree with Sheryl. I think there's going to be a huge market penetration with these electric vehicles in the light duty market, but the heavy duty market is kind of yet to be seen. We'll see. I think the biofuels compete really heavily on low carbon, and they're nearly no emissions now, these newer vehicles. So I think it's going to have to compete on economics. And until we see that, I think it's going to be a longer game for the heavy duty market. But I think we're going to see sustainable aviation fuel and the shipping industry that are really awful polluters really come in line. And that's going to be a huge success in terms of that. And you're also going to see carbon sequestration, which is a way, when the oil industry, and they have to inject something in the ground to get the oil and gas out, they're going to start injecting in this CO2 as a way to do that instead of, I don't even know what they use today, maybe water, I don't know. But they're going to start using that to inject into as an alternative. They're still going to use oil until we can really slowly get off it. And really, in the past 10 years, we've only really reduced our petroleum use in the electric vehicle industry by about 10%. So it's slow. We're 90%. Well, I haven't checked this year, but based on last year, we were 90% dependent on fossil fuels for our electric power. So we really have a long way to go. But I think we're going to see huge strides in that electric power moving towards renewables. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I was in California this past week, and I was surprised by how many my Ubers were electric vehicles. And everyone talked about, I saw a $5 a gallon price tag, and they said, they charge once a week and for $12. So it just really was
that's paying for your carbon. That's the cost of paying for carbon reduction, right?
Yeah.
So if you can charge for less, and California's electric grid is much more renewable than the rest of the nation. So they are more renewable.
Absolutely. Let me shift back to you. People want to know so much about both of you. So they want to know about your advice and mentorship. So what's one of the best pieces of advice, Sheryl, that you've ever received? And then I'm going to check and see if Oprah's watching. Yeah, Miss Winfrey. Miss Winfrey. Shouldn't be calling her by her first name. What's the best advice you've ever received about being in business?
Oh,
That's a tough one.
Rule number one, and I probably didn't follow it to the extent that I needed to. Rule number one, raise money. Rule number two, don't run out of money.
Hey, that's good for life.
That's good for life.
For life. No, but
right. But the most, in all seriousness, but I think the most important advice I got really is learning how to command my day in the morning, right? And also setting goals. And my business would not have come about had I not been serious about setting personal goals, like life goals. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you can design your future. Yeah. Having that discipline and living in that manner. So I would say, and of course, prayer. Yeah, just stay prayed up.
No, I love what you just said, and commanding your day in the beginning. And my dad used to always say that, like, you can have bad moments, but you don't have enough days to give up a whole day to being a bad day. You can have bad moments, but you don't have enough days.
You can't
give a whole day over being a bad day.
Exactly.
So I love that piece of advice that you have. Jill, how about you? What's the best piece of advice?
I loved what Sheryl said. I have to agree wholeheartedly. I think this is a small thing, that one of my colleagues who had to have a business degree, and I did not, I was a sustainability major, right? Before it was cool to be one. She taught me how to use a day timer, right? But it goes along with setting those goals. Set your priorities for the day, know where you're going, look at and do your planning. And I'd also recommend trying to get some longer term clients if you can do that. whether it's a trade organization, a state contract, or what have you, for work like Sheryl and myself. In my case, it's getting nonprofit organizations long-term contracts to help stabilize you while you're having these other smaller projects that may pace you. So I think that would be helpful. But looking at your day timer and prioritizing every day, Sheryl, I think is huge. Starting with prayer, it's a good way to do it. Or your meditation, whatever it is, to really have time for yourself and before you start your day. And I do that every day. And I reflect on it. I also thank my clients. And I think you really need to go back and have that really personal relationship with your clients, that they can trust you, you trust them, and you have an open dialogue.
I love that. And to your point, the biggest business generation vehicle is the work that's on your desk. And it will get you more and more work, more and more. But we have confirmed Miss Winfrey is watching. So this is the question.
Oh no.
It's a good one. It's good. All right. So Miss Winfrey is watching, probably some other investors, some other people who are saying, I see these two women, they are bright lights, shining stars. How do I support them? And how do I support others like them? How do I ensure that what I see here is multiplied? Is there something I could be doing to make that happen? Sheryl, what's your advice to all of us that are in the investor, whether we be purchaser investors or other type of investors? What's your advice to us?
First, I would start off with my motto: Dye Technologies is the art and soul of electric vehicle charging. And what we do, our artistry is our creativity, and we are professional problem solvers. And we've brought all of our experience. And when I say we, I'm talking about my engineering folks, my electricians, and myself. We brought all of our experience in different industries to the fore to learn and also master the skill of installing, make ready, or the infrastructure for EV charging, as well as understanding the products and the EV charging station. So I would start off with that. And we're the soul of the industry, because not only do we offer the conversation or have the skill set to go after business, we can actually do the work. Okay, so a lot of what's going on in our industry right now, because there's a lot of hoopless, a lot of opportunity, you've got folks out there, no shade to them, but they're not necessarily the real deal. They'll win a contract, they'll win an opportunity, and come back to me to fulfill it. So my thing is, why go through the intermediary? Come just to us. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing I would share with Ms. Winfrey is that I would just let's talk about your real estate portfolio. How can we help you shepherd EV adoption with the assets that you have on your books? We would love to help you do that.
Excellent. I love it. Jill?
Well, exposure and education is the best thing, right? I think, using that voice is important. Having a platform for people interested investors, whether it's buying an electric vehicle or the biofuel, wanting to obtain biofuels, having a platform for that, as well as exposure to potential investors. I know with my industry, I do work with equity investors to fund projects like the Sustainable Aviation Project I mentioned, or others, other large renewable diesel, biodiesel, could be expanding Sheryl Pond's outfit. If we're trying to build this industry, we need to be able to better connect with interested social investors. And if there's a way to get our colleagues integrated with that, that would be a really wonderful tool. And to do it in a forum where it doesn't cost $1,000 for these entrepreneurs to come to the table, really just have it free for the entrepreneurs, where the investors maybe can come in and listen to their pitches. That would be hugely helpful.
I love it. And I think all of us, as we think about those who are in our network, sure, I try to tell everyone that's thinking about getting a EV charging station, Sheryl Ponds can do that for you. Like they can, and the word of mouth, right? You're on this platform. sharing both of your, Jill, what is your targeted client? What's the ideal person that we should be referring you to? Tell us that, Jill.
Who's my ideal client? Oh,
Yeah,
somebody who's interested in making changes in the energy industry. So most of my clients are like Magellan Buckeye Pipeline, to biofuel producers, to retailers that want, the electric vehicle or biofuel infrastructure. There's a wide gamut of them, or the trade organizations are my clients to help meet their members' needs. So there's just a variety out there. But one thing I did want to mention before we sign off here is that, both Sheryl and I are on the Greater Washington Region Clean Cities Coalition. I think it's important for entrepreneurs to get involved in coalitions like that. It's great networking. Whatever your industry is, find out what the local trade organization is, or even the national one, and see if there's a way to, a lot of them will offer, if you're not yet producing or out there yet, if you're considering going into business, they will usually do one gratis. So you can look at trying to get involved in those type of networking opportunities and talk to colleagues in your field.
I love it. And you're so right. Your field, there's no competition really, right?
No.
There's
room for all of us.
always, there's room for all of you. Let me ask this question as we wrap up. And I'm claiming this for both of you, your best days are still ahead of you. But what is something that you say now, that you have now, that you say, I'm really, really proud of that. Really proud that I was able to accomplish that. And then I might ask you another question, but let's get that one.
Okay.
What's the thing you look to?
What I am really proud of is the fact that I accomplished a big portion of what I said I would accomplish, and that is understanding what makes the EV charging infrastructure and actually being able to help build it. Okay. And that was something that I had to lean on, my engineering credentials, I had to lean on that in order to put the pieces together. Okay. Because there is not like buying a pattern from Simplicity or Vogue. Okay. There was no map for it. I had no one, there's not a process. I couldn't find it on Google, or I didn't even look really, but I had to put the pieces together. And not, never having worked for a utility company or worked with an electrical contractor, I learned that I really learned something in engineering school, and I learned a whole lot when I entered into manufacturing. So I'm just really proud of the fact that I had a thought, I studied it, and I applied my knowledge to bring something to life in real life. And a lot of people, I'm learning as I grow older, a lot of people in this world are not fortunate to have had that experience. Everyone's capable of doing it, but many people in this world have not had the experience of putting their mind to something and seeing it materialize in the physical realm. And I thank God that, I'm one of those people.
No, that's beautiful, beautifully stated. Jill, how about you? What's something?
My kids joke that I don't really work, I just talk on the phone. But I would have to say I'm very grateful to have be partnered with some really amazing people that helped me keep this business going for 25 years. That in and of itself is probably my greatest accomplishment. But most recently, I'm really excited about a climate smart project that was $100 million. I think it was awarded at $95 million just a few months ago under the USDA VILSAC program. It's basically trying to monetize carbon reduction in the agricultural industry, and being able to have that like blockchain track through the supply chain all the way to the end user. So I'm really excited about that work, and proud to be part of that team that was selected. And so I guess that's one of my most recent ones, but there are many.
No, that's huge, huge. First of all, let me just say what a pleasure it has been to get to interview both of you. You both are so inspiring and doing such powerful work in our community and our world. And I'm just grateful that I I got to interview you today. Let me have everyone know all of your .coms, your ads, your Instagrams. How do people follow you, get in touch with you? Sheryl, tell us, give us all of those now.
Okay, the best way, and I can type it in the chat. The best way to get in touch.
Oh no, we have all your stuff. It's already posted.
Okay, it's already there. Okay,
This
so
is for people on the phone.
okay, the people on the phone. Linktree. Linktree will connect you to all of the platforms that we're a part of, and it's spelled link linktr.ee/DiTech Corp info. Okay, and that way you'll get a list of all of our platforms, and you can click our website, our IG account, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. If we had YouTube, the whole thing. So if we are somewhere on the internet or the World Wide Web, you'll find it there.
Excellent. Excellent. Joe, how do we get in contact?
The best way to reach me is my email, but if you can't find that, our website, scsi-online.com, will get you to it.
Excellent. Thank you both. Tune in, everyone, next week for 2 additional wonderful entrepreneurs focused on wealth coaching. So I'm bringing my bank account statements for this one. Follow us on JH Connects on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Thank you to our partners, Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins Health System, Hopkins Local, the Mayor's Office of Small Minority Women-Owned Business, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Thank you, Sheryl. Thank you, Jill.